Hi, I'm Ben Goldfarb, and I'm a freelance writer who writes about science, the environment, wildlife management, conservation, that sort of thing. And this past fall I received a grant from the Solutions Journalism Network to complete a project about the Yellowstone to Yukon Conservation Initiative, or Y2Y for short. Y2Y is a giant international conservation project that seeks to connect Yellowstone National Park in Wyoming with the Yukon, all the way up in Canada. That's 2,000 miles of connected wildlife habitat. This is a new model of conservation, one that says that while parks and protected areas are great, they're not adequate to protect many wide-ranging species like wolves, grizzly bears, caribou, moose, migratory birds and fish, and so on. These animals range far and wide in search of food, habitat, mates, and along traditional migration routes. And climate change will only increase the need to facilitate this kind of connectivity as animals are forced to move north and to higher altitudes as their ranges shift. The challenge and the imperative of Y2Y is to create a connected landscape that will allow animals to move as they please, fluidly through this giant international conservation area. But of course that's really difficult because in between the parks and protected areas that make up this network, there are mines, ranches, cities, houses, farms, you name it, all manner of human infrastructure. Lots of highways, of course, too. And, getting animals to cross these human-imposed obstacles is really challenging. For every human impediment, though, there's a solution. And I spent 2 months this fall driving north to south from the Yukon to Yellowstone, logging about 5,000 miles in the car, learning about the things that different individuals and organizations are doing to make this landscape passable for wildlife. So, for example, in British Columbia, land trusts are buying key parcels of land that will allow grizzly bears to move from ecosystem to ecosystem. In Montana, foresters are leaving behind stands of trees so that wildlife can use the trees as they move through the landscape. In Alberta, ranchers are modifying the way they run cattle so that bears and wolves don't run into conflicts on their land. And all over the West, all over Canada as well, biologists are literally building bridges over highways so that wildlife can get from one side of the road to the other safely. One of the projects that really epitomizes Y2Y to me is this little tiny piece of land called the Frog Bear Conservation Area in British Columbia. It turns out that this little patch of land is highly significant for grizzly bear connectivity. You've got one set of mountains on one side, one set of mountains on the other side, and they need to cross this little parcel of land that for a long time has been owned by a local timber company. So just recently, Y2Y and some other partner groups came together and they bought this little piece of land to ensure that it will forever be protected from development, and that grizzly bears will always be able to cross from one population to the other, or from one ecosystem to the other. And what's so cool about that too is that the local lumber company that owned that land reached out to them, was really willing to sell because the owner of the lumber company believed in the mission, understood the importance of having large animals on this landscape. And to me that really epitomizes what Y2Y is about. It's about strategic land acquisition, tying together big pieces of land, and different stakeholders coming together around a common vision. Another really cool project that I saw was something called the People's Way Partnership, which is being conducted in northern Montana on US 93, which is a highway that runs from north to south through Montana. And the People's Way is this collaboration between local tribes, the Montana Department of Transportation, and other agencies and groups to basically create wildlife crossings from one side of US 93 to the other, all along the highway over a span of many miles. There are everything from giant overpasses, giant bridges that cross the highway for grizzly bears and mountain lions and moose, to tiny little culverts that are designed for moles and mice and rodents. They've thought of every species and they've facilitated their crossing the road to connect one side of the highway to the other, so that animals aren't genetically isolated. Y2Y isn't about returning the earth to some mystical original version that existed 10,000 years ago. It's about understanding that this human infrastructure exists. We're on the landscape for better and worse, and we're not going to tear down our civilizations, but we're going to slightly modify them in several key ways, in several key places, to make them more amenable to other organisms. So that's what I did. I had a fantastic time doing it, and I just wanted to say thank you so much to the Solutions Journalism Network for funding this amazing experience, and of course to the Yellowstone to Yukon Conservation Initiative and all of the amazing biologists, ecologists, ranchers, farmers, foresters, land trust managers, and all the other figures I met along the way who are just so helpful and interesting. So thank you, everybody.